Picture this. It's 1915, the world is at war, and soldiers are using gas and bayonets to claw through Europe. Then a toxic yellow-green cloud rolls across the battlefield. Soldiers start coughing up their own lungs, only to rise covered in blood, looking like the dead come back to life. Welcome to the Attack of the Dead Men, a moment where war turned into pure horror. Get ready for gas, gore, and ghostly soldiers as we unravel what happens when death simply refuses to take hold. Let's dive into the horrifying details of World War I's most weird battle you probably never heard of. I'm Sticky Nick. Brace yourselves. Chemical warfare in World War I was the dawn of a new and dreadful kind of horror. The Germans, desperate for control, introduced poison gas during the Second Battle of Ypres in April 1915, using chlorine and bromine gases as weapons. Imagine being a soldier with no gas mask. What do you do when a poisonous gas cloud drifts towards you? You grab whatever you can, a wet rag, your shirt, even if it's soaked in urine. It's disgusting, yes, but when you're fighting to stay alive, that's the least of your worries. Ever heard the term desperate times call for desperate measures? These men invented the phrase, soaked rags in water or even urine. These were their only shot at not choking to death. Would you use your own pee to breathe another day? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Chemical warfare had become a monstrous reality on the Western Front. Mustard gas, chlorine, phosgene, and each one more horrifying than the last. Chlorine gas, that was the cruelest. It turns into hydrochloric acid when it meets the moisture in your body, dissolving you from the inside out. Imagine trying to take a breath as your lungs started to melt, eyes burning, skin blistering, and with every desperate cough you're choking up chunks of your own flesh. And there's nowhere to run. Ozoic Fortress 1915 was where these horrors reached new heights. And here's the kicker. It wasn't just about killing soldiers. Chlorine gas was a psychological weapon too, meant to break morale, to remind every man that even breathing could be deadly. Are you desperate enough yet? Yeah, me too. Ozoic Fortress, located in what is now northeast Poland, was a vital choke point. Built by the Russian Empire in the 19th century, it stood surrounded by marshland and defended a key railway line. A prize so important the Germans couldn't afford to lose. Ozoic was a nightmare for the Germans, a fortress they needed to capture, but a fortress that refused to crumble. The marshland, artillery defenses, and the grit of Russian soldiers had withstood everything thrown at it, until August 1915. In 1914, they'd tried 40 battalions, heavy artillery, nothing. But by early 1915, they'd been beaten back twice more. But this fortress was too valuable. Kaiser Wilhelm wasn't ready to call it quits, so he turned to Field Marshal Paul von Hindenburg, the man with a big reputation and even bigger guns. When brute force fails, bring in the man with the bigger toys, right? Hindenburg had more artillery this time. He had gas canisters, a twisted plan, and the grim willingness to do anything to break the Russian defenders. 30 canisters of chlorine, 30 artillery batteries, all to crush one fortress. Ever hear the phrase, third time lucky? The Germans had twice tried to storm the place. This time they brought a hellish weapon, a toxic cloud that made the ground turn black and the birds drop from the sky. Stick with me and let's see if the Russians still have some fight left in them. August 6, 1915, 4 a.m. Paul von Hindenburg had his moment. The wind was right and 30 chlorine canisters were opened, rolling towards Ozoic. Picture it, an enormous creeping cloud, green and yellow, flowing over the battlefields. Birds dropped from the sky, the grass turned black, and every Russian soldier knew this was something different. The gas choked the men in their trenches. They coughed as hydrochloric acid formed inside their lungs, burning, blistering, dissolving them from the inside out. Eyes melted, skin boiled, and every single breath was agony. It wasn't just an attack, it was a promise. Death was coming, one breath at a time. The Russian soldiers spat up pieces of their lungs, blood dripped from their noses and ears. Their uniforms, soaked with blood and sweat, clung to their blistering skin. Some were blinded, eyes burnt beyond saving, but a few didn't just survive. They rose. Lieutenant Vladimir Kotlinski and 60 other soldiers emerged from their trenches, barely human anymore, faces wrapped in blood-soaked rags, skin peeling away. Their lungs were shredded, yet they charged. They staggered forward, bayonets raised, coughing up blood and bile. Imagine being a German soldier at that moment. You've unleashed a chemical apocalypse. You step forward expecting to see corpses, and instead you see them standing, charging at you like the living dead. The Germans panicked. They ran straight into their traps. They were terrified. It wasn't just a counterattack. It was a nightmare come to life. Zombies in World War I. The Germans weren't fighting soldiers. They were fighting monsters. What would you do? Stand your ground or run like hell? Drop your thoughts below. I'm betting most of you would be running. History might call this bravery. Maybe it was, or maybe it was just the madness of knowing you're already dead and you've got nothing left to lose. Desperate men can make the most terrifying enemies. Despite their supernatural efforts, the Oswiecki fortress eventually fell, but not because of the Germans. The Russians knew their position was hopeless. Instead of letting the enemy take their fortress, they dismantled it, destroying the prize the Germans had wanted so badly. Lieutenant Kotlinski didn't live to see the end of the day. He succumbed to his injuries, passing command to the 2nd Oswiecka Sap Company. His men fought until they couldn't. Even when death had them by their throats, they refused to let go. The attack of the dead men wasn't just a battle, it was a testament to resilience, to sheer human will. When everything else fails, when death is inevitable, sometimes just standing up and walking into the storm is enough to make even the most hardened enemy run. So, would you be able to fight even as your lungs melted and your skin burned? Tell me in the comments. Are you the type to stay down or rise again? Like what you've seen today, want to dive deeper into the horrors that history has hidden away? Hit that like button, subscribe, and join me for more stories that will leave you both horrified and shocked. Until next time, stay curious and stay alive. History's darkest moments are always worth remembering, even to remind us how far we've come.